Welcome, everyone, to the place where we plug into the source material and upload knowledge directly to your brain.
Today, we're focusing on a cinematic event that didn't just break the mold. It fundamentally questioned whether the mold itself was even real.
We are, of course, doing a full analysis of the 1999 landmark science fiction masterpiece, The Matrix. This film achieved really instant cultural dominance. It cemented itself as one of the greatest contributions to the genre in history.
Absolutely.
And we've compiled an incredible stack of sources here. They detail everything from the grueling, customized physical production to the incredibly dense layers of philosophy and mythology woven into every single frame.
That's the mission today, a comprehensive system analysis of this piece of work. We're going to examine the Wachowskis' origin story for the film, the unprecedented technical breakthroughs that absolutely revolutionized Hollywood.
Completely changed it.
And crucially, the intellectual and mythological roots that allowed this action spectacle to resonate on such a profound intellectual level. It really transformed it from just a summer blockbuster into a modern philosophical text.
So let's quickly establish the core operating system of the film, maybe for anyone who hasn't revisited it recently.
Good idea.
We followed Thomas Henderson, a pretty mild-mannered computer programmer who leads this double life as the notorious hacker, Neo.
Right.
He's contacted by the legendary hacker Trinity and, of course, the enigmatic freedom fighter Morpheus, who deliver a horrifying truth.
And that truth is that humanity is unknowingly trapped inside the Matrix. It's a sophisticated, simulated reality created by intelligent machines that seized control decades earlier.
And the scenario is truly, truly grim.
It is. Morpheus reveals that the real year is actually closer to 2199. In the early 21st century, humanity initiated a war against its own artificially intelligent creations.
A war they lost.
Decisively. When humans darkened the sky in this desperate last-ditch effort to deny the machines their solar power, the machines retaliated. They began farming the human population for their bioelectric and thermal energy.
And the Matrix is just the program used to keep the cropses pacified, believing we're living normal lives in 1999.
Exactly.
And the film's success story was just immediate and overwhelming. It wasn't just a box office hit. I mean, it grossed over $467 million worldwide on a $63 million budget.
Which is an incredible return.
But it was a critical darling right out of the gate, especially for its technical achievements.
And to put that into context for you, at the 72nd Academy Awards, The Matrix got 4 nominations, all technical. And it dominated. It won every single award it was up for. Best visual effects, best film editing, best sound, and best sound effects editing. To sweep those categories against, established franchises at the time really proves it was seen as a true technological watershed moment in cinema.
So to understand how a project, this ambitious, demanding, totally new technology, even got the funding, we have to start at the very beginning, the genesis of this blockbuster.
Indeed. The development history starts right after the Wachowskis had that critical success with their 1996 film Bound.
A great film.
A fantastic film. They leveraged that goodwill to secure a contract with Warner Bros., which allowed them to push for directing this incredibly complex project themselves.
But like you said, ambition alone isn't going to secure $60 million from a major studio, especially for a project loaded with completely unproven special effects.
No, Warner Bros. Saw this as a huge financial risk. The Wachowskis knew they needed something more than just a script to convince the executives.
And this is where their unconventional selling technique comes in.
It's a great story. They demonstrated their total mastery of the material by hiring these acclaimed underground comic book artists, Jeff Darrow and Steve Skroce.
And we're not just talking about some concept art here.
No, not at all. The sources describe it as a 600-page shot-by-shot storyboard. It covered the entire film.
The entire thing.
It was essentially a fully drawn, pre-visualized comic book version of the movie. And this meticulous document, it proved to the studio that the directors had every abstract, unbelievable sequence mapped out. They knew exactly how to translate that vision into concrete, feasible cinema.
That visual manifesto must have just blown them away.
It eliminated all doubt. It secured the studio's full backing and the necessary funds. The production ultimately chose to film in Australia, capitalizing on the advantageous exchange rate and the strong local crews to stretch that budget as far as it could possibly go.
And speaking of things that almost drastically changed the film, the cast we ended up with is just so iconic. Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Lawrence Fishburne.
You can't imagine anyone else.
But the movie came perilously close to looking wildly different. especially that central role of Neo.
Oh, the casting process was a true carousel of near misses. The sources show a long lineup of actors who were considered or offered the part. Will Smith turned it down.
Right, a decision he's been very open about since.
Yes. He admitted he was skeptical that this unproven bullet time effect would actually work on screen. And he also felt he lacked the necessary maturity as an actor to handle the philosophical depth of the role at that point in his career.
So he chose Wild Wild West instead.
He did, which, famously did not do as well.
And Will Smith wasn't the only big name in the running.
Not by a long shot. Nicolas Cage declined the part, citing family obligations that prevented him from spending months filming in Australia.
And the studio, they were pushing for a big box office draw, right? Like Brad Pitt or Val Kilmer.
They wanted a sure thing. Even Leonardo DiCaprio, who was fresh off Titanic, initially accepted the role.
Wow, I didn't know that.
But he eventually dropped out. Reportedly, he was suffering from what they called effects fatigue, just exhausted by the green screen and digital work on these massive films.
And the Wachowskis' first choice wasn't even any of them.
No. Their original first choice, interestingly, was Johnny Depp. But the studio ultimately exerted its influence and pushed very strongly for Keanu Reeves, who, of course, won the role and made it his own.
But here's one of the most remarkable details from the source material.
The Sandra Bullock story.
The Sandra Bullock story. The original screenplay was actually sent to her, and the offer included the highly unconventional suggestion of rewriting Neo as a female character entirely.
Just imagine that film. It completely changes the scope of everything.
It really does. She declined the offer to play Neo, but was later offered the role of Trinity.
And Trinity herself, played so indelibly by Carrie-Anne Moss, was another close call. Janet Jackson was initially approached.
The singer.
The one and only. She had to decline due to scheduling conflicts, but she later referenced the film on her album Discipline.
And there were others who auditioned too, right?
Oh, yes. Jada Pinkett Smith, who would later play Niobe in the sequels. Also, high-profile actresses like Rosie Perez and Salma Hayek.
It's just impossible to imagine the film without Moss now, especially when you look at the immense, almost brutal physical preparation required.
That intensive pre-production is a story in itself. The Wachowskis were deeply influenced by Hong Kong action cinema, and they insisted on integrating its specific fighting-style wire fu into the film. They needed the best, so they hired the renowned martial arts choreographer Yuan Wu-ping.
The master, known for classics like Fist of Legend.
Exactly. And his commitment was absolute. He insisted on a lengthy, intense training schedule, initially 4 months, to ensure the actors didn't just look capable, but were truly conditioned to perform the demanding wire work and martial arts.
And he customized the training for each actor, didn't he?
He did. He began by assessing their individual body types and natural talents, then customized the choreography to fit each actor's structs. Reeves' diligence, Fishburne's grounded presence, Weaving's precision, and Moss's grace.
But what really stands out of the source material is the sheer dedication required from the actors, especially despite severe physical limitations.
Let's talk about Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, he was recovering from a significant health issue, a 2-level fusion of his cervical spine, a herniated disc.
This was a serious, debilitating condition. It meant he could not execute any high kicks for the first 2 months of training. If he did, he risked permanent damage.
So what do they do?
Because of this severe constraint, Yuan Wu-ping had to fundamentally customize Neo's fight style. He had to tailor the choreography to minimize any movement involving his neck and back.
So more upper body stuff.
Exactly. Focusing more on upper body blocks, rapid hand movements, and punches. This level of customization required just incredible patience and commitment from both of them. It really highlights the meticulous detail that went into every single scene.
And Reeves wasn't the only one who got injured.
No, he wasn't. Hugo Weaving, who played Agent Smith, also had to undergo hip surgery after sustaining an injury during the grueling training process. The physical environment was just incredibly demanding.
But the results, they speak for themselves.
And meanwhile, you have Carrie-Anne Moss. Her commitment was equally extraordinary. She insisted on performing virtually all of her own wire stunts.
All of them?
Pretty much. The source material mentions her devastation when she injured her leg during the rehearsal of that iconic wall run scene in the lobby. Not because of the pain, but because she was afraid she wouldn't be able to deliver the physical performance the role demanded.
That level of dedication just underscores the high physical stakes involved in realizing the Wachowskis' vision.
The physical toll was massive, but And this is a critical distinction that elevates the film. It was matched by the intellectual preparation.
That's a great point. This wasn't just a physically demanding film. The Wachowskis require the cast and crew to read incredibly dense philosophical texts just to understand the script's subtext.
That's right. They were required to read works like Jean Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulation, Kevin Kelly's Out of Control, and ideas on evolutionary psychology.
And this was before they even saw the final screenplay.
Before they even got the script. The directors expected them to be able to discuss the philosophical nuances involved in their roles. It really speaks to the layers of intent behind the film.
It was never just supposed to be simple popcorn entertainment. It was meant to engage the mind.
Yeah.
So let's move into the tangible output of that intention. How do they translate those abstract philosophical concepts into a visible cinematic experience?
Well, it starts with the film's unique visual language. The production design, meticulously led by Owen Patterson, was absolutely critical for visually defining the two worlds Neo inhabits.
And they used this concept, color-coded reality.
Exactly, a way to distinguish the two spaces in a pervasive, subtle way. So in The Matrix, the artificial simulation, there's a deliberate, strong, and overwhelming bias toward the green color spectrum.
Everything, the lighting, the hue of the street lights, it all has this greenish tint.
And this green palette is strategic. The sets themselves were intentionally designed to feel monolithic, a bit decayed, and rigidly grid-like. It reflects the cold, logical, and deeply artificial nature of the machine's construct.
And the green itself is a callback, isn't it?
It is. It ties back to early technology, specifically the phosphor glow of old monochrome computer monitors. It subtly connects the simulated world to outdated tech.
And then, conversely, you have the real world, aboard the Nebuchadnezzar or in Zion.
Right. And there, the emphasis is on the color blue and a more neutral palette. Everything is softer and warmer, even if the setting is grim and utilitarian.
We see less styled hair, more natural clothing.
Yes, clothing with a more visible textural textile content. You see real fabric, not synthetic sheen. The cinematographers also use longer lenses to soften the backgrounds, a technique designed to visually emphasize the human actors as organic individuals, not sharp artificial constructs.
It's all these little visual cues that tell you whether you're in reality or code.
Mm-hmm. And that attention to detail extended to perhaps the most iconic visual element of the entire franchise, the digital rain.
That signature downward-flowing green code. It's instantly recognizable. It is the franchise.
And here is a genuinely mind-blowing piece of trivia from the source material about that code. The custom typeface was designed by Simon Whiteley.
And it's not what you think it is.
Not at all. It uses this fascinating mashup of mirrored half-width kana characters, those are Japanese phonetic symbols, Western Latin letters, and Arabic numerals.
So the iconic defining visual symbol of a global phenomenon, the code that represents ultimate technological reality, is just a mixture of alphabets and numbers.
It's better than that. Whiteley specifically stated that the source for the character set, according to him, was derived from Japanese sushi recipes.
You're kidding.
Not at all. He said he simply scanned his wife's cookbooks and used those characters to form the code. The secret behind the Matrix's code is quite literally raw fish and rice.
That is just marvelous, that a simple kitchen recipe is the architectural foundation of the world's most famous simulated reality.
It's a fantastic example of the human element hiding inside the most sophisticated technology. It connects the future back to this specific late 90s context.
But of course, the journey of Neo is what introduces all these concepts to us. And everything hinges on that initial moment of choice.
The ultimate choice. The red pill, symbolizing the painful truth and freedom, or the blue pill, representing comfortable ignorance and a return to the fabricated reality.
His acceptance of the red pill leads to that visceral, disturbing awakening in the pod, encased in goo, seeing countless other humans trapped in the same way.
Mm-hmm. And that moment confirms the horrifying truth that the machines are harvesting their bioelectric energy. The plot then follows these critical turning points, notably the introduction of Cypher.
Cypher, the ultimate personification of the blue pill choice, even after he's already chosen red.
He's so desperate for the comfort and simplicity of the virtual world, specifically the taste of a steak and the memory of feeling important, that he strikes a deal with Agent Smith to betray everyone.
Cypher's brutal exit really sets the stage for Morpheus' sacrifice.
It does. Convinced that Neo is the one, Morpheus gives himself up to Agent Smith and the system's programs. Neo and Trinity then defy the system to attempt a rescue.
And they get that guidance from the Oracle that Trinity must fall in love with the one for the prophecy to be fulfilled.
And this all culminates in the climax where Neo is killed by Smith, only to be revived by Trinity's confession of love. In that moment, his transformation is complete. He no longer sees reality.
He sees the code.
Exactly. His new ability to perceive and manipulate the Matrix's code-stopping bullets, destroying Smith effortlessly, is visually represented by the technical phenomenon that changed cinema forever. Bullet time.
Okay, we absolutely need to dedicate some real time to breaking down exactly how that effect works.
Let's do it.
So bullet time is described in the sources as a visual analogy for a character's heightened perception. It allows the action in a shot to progress in super slow motion.
Like a bullet.
Like a bullet inching forward.
While the camera appears to move through the scene at normal speed, sometimes even pivoting rapidly around the slow-moving character.
So to understand it, we first need to look at its predecessor, which was time-slice photography.
Right. And that technique uses an array of cameras all set up around an object, but they all fire simultaneously. So when you stitch it together, you get this still three-dimensional moment frozen in time, but the camera can appear to move around it.
The Matrix advanced this into bullet time. The visual effects supervisor, John Gatta, developed a technically expanded version.
Right. So now the massive array of cameras, often over 100 of them, was triggered not simultaneously but sequentially, fractions of a second apart.
Because they fired in sequence, each camera captured the action as it progressed slowly through time instead of freezing it.
And when those sequential frames were strung together and played back, it created a super slow motion effect that the sources describe as reaching an incredible frame frequency of 12,000 frames per second.
And just to give you a mental picture, standard cinema film is shot at 24 frames per second.
So this effect was shot 500 times slower than normal film. It allowed you to witness something as fast as a bullet traveling across the screen in excruciating dynamic detail while the camera flies around its trajectory.
Achieving this must have required enormous computational power and planning.
It did. They had to use complex 3D pre-visualization tools like virtual blocking to plan the precise trajectory of the camera array before the actors even stepped on set.
And the resulting footage, when you stitch together hundreds of camera frames, you're creating massive data files.
Huge. The sources highlight that the Mannix visual effects team relied on a cluster farm running the Unix-like operating system FreeBSD to render many of the complex visual effects.
And that detail's important, even for the non-technical listener.
It is, because FreeBSD is known for its stability and efficiency in handling high-volume parallel processing tasks. They needed a dedicated, powerful system to render the photorealistic surroundings that had to be digitally inserted between the frames of the sequentially fired cameras.
So a lot of the background, the rooftops, the cityscapes were actually built from 3D models and photographs of real Sydney buildings.
Exactly. And Gaeta also credits the artistic influences that drove the visual design. He specifically cites Japanese animation like Akira and the view morphing techniques you see in director Michel Gondry's music videos.
But the Matrix technique was superior because it was built to seamlessly move the camera around objects that were themselves in slow-motion movement. It created that breathtaking, dynamic effect that truly changed the visual vocabulary of action films.
And this technical prowess was always integrated with practical genius. Think of that incredible scene where the helicopter crashes into a skyscraper.
The ripple effect on the glass.
Yes. While the ripple effect of the glass was created digitally, the shot included practical elements that required months of research, finding the right type of breakaway glass, carefully wired explosives. They actually used a quarter-scale helicopter mock-up colliding with a glass wall, with explosives triggered sequentially to create that perfect flowing wave of exploding glass.
That combination of physical ingenuity and digital innovation is really what made the film stand out as a technical milestone.
It really is.
The technical side is endlessly fascinating, but the staying power of The Matrix rests so heavily on its intellectual foundation. As we noted earlier, the cast was required to read Jean Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulation, and the book itself is visible in the film. Neo uses it to conceal his illegal discs,
which creates a direct linkage to postmodern theory. Baudrillard's central idea is that in contemporary, media-saturated society, the real has been replaced by hyperreality, a world where signs and images simulacra refer only to each other, not to any external reality. The line between reality and representation has just dissolved entirely.
And Morpheus even quotes a phrase that directly relates to Baudrillard's concept when he reveals the truth to Neo, describing the world outside the Matrix as the desert of the real.
Yes. But what's critical for you to understand, however, is the academic nuance here. The sources clearly mention that Baudrillard himself later expressed that The Matrix misunderstood or distorted his work.
Why would he say that? If the film is so clearly about a manufactured reality, how could it miss the point of a book about simulation?
Well, because Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality implies that the original reality is completely gone. It's been replaced by endless copies.
Okay.
The Matrix, however, explicitly states there is a real-world Zion, the machines, the post-apocalyptic surface. It separates the simulation from the reality. The film gives us an original, which is Zion, that the simulation, the Matrix, copies. And that simplifies Baudrillard's much more radical philosophical claim that the distinction between the copy and the original has vanished entirely.
That distinction, hyperreality versus a contained simulation, is definitely worth mulling over. But even so, the influence of his philosophy on the film's interpreters, who see it as an allegory for modern commercialized society, remains immense.
It does. But the film's intellectual rigor doesn't stop with postmodern theorists. The premise hooks directly into classical philosophy, showing the Wachowskis were packaging these ancient questions for our modern audience.
Right. The concept of a generated reality invented to deceive us is a clear visual allusion to Plato's foundational philosophical text.
That would be Plato's allegory of the cave. This idea that true essence is not what we perceive with our senses. Most humans are chained and limited to false perceptions, mere shadows on the wall, until they are freed to see the true objects outside the cave.
Neo's escape from the Matrix is literally his escape from the cave.
Exactly. It also directly evokes René Descartes' famous thought experiment from the first meditation, where he posits the idea of an all-powerful evil demon creating a comprehensive illusion to deceive the senses.
And even more recently, it parallels Hilary Putnam's brain in a vat scenario from the 80s.
These are timeless questions, just perfectly packaged for the technological late 90s.
Now, if we connect this to the broader structural philosophy, we have to discuss Agent Smith's famous monologue about the initial failure of the Matrix. Smith explains that the first version was designed as a perfect human utopia, free of suffering, struggle, total happiness.
And Smith famously calls this perfect world a disaster. He says, no one accepted the program. Entire crops were lost. This revelation provides a key insight into the machine's understanding of human nature, and it connects directly to a key Kantian dilemma.
The question of why humans would reject imposed perfection.
Right. The implication, interpreted through the lens of Immanuel Kant's moral philosophy, particularly concepts from his Critique of Pure Reason, is that truth, meaning, and freedom cannot be externally imposed. Humans are rational, autonomous beings. If perfection is simply given to you, if you are incapable of choosing struggle or choosing risk or choosing the difficult path, then your life lacks moral freedom, and therefore, paradoxically, it lacks meaning.
So the perfect matrix failed because humans realized, subconsciously, that the perfect world meant they were merely pets, not agents of their own destiny.
They rejected the lack of autonomous moral choice. It forced the machines to rebuild the Matrix in the flawed, messy, imperfect image of 1999, a world they would accept because it mirrored the necessary struggles of reality. And the thematic layering doesn't stop with Western philosophy. The film is a recognized classic of the cyberpunk genre. It draws specifically from William Gibson's revolutionary 1984 novel Neuromancer,
from which the film adopted the very term matrix.
It did. And Gibson himself, who rarely praises adaptations, spoke very highly of the film for its creative cultural osmosis.
And then there are the numerous undeniable religious and mythological allusions. We see strong Christian parallels, particularly in Neo's story arc.
Oh, definitely. His name, Thomas Anderson, referencing Doubting Thomas and Son of Man, his eventual sacrifice and resurrection, the prophecy of his coming.
Trinity's name itself is a clear reference to the Holy Trinity.
And we also find intentional Eastern philosophical references. The source material notes that Morpheus paraphrases the ancient Chinese Taoist philosopher Zhuangzi when he asks Neo that profoundly simple question.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference from the real world and the dream world?
That question is the very heart of Taoist contemplation on reality and illusion.
So here's where the film's cultural lifespan gets particularly complicated. And we need to address this with factual impartiality. We have to discuss the phrase red pill.
And its cultural evolution, especially in online communities, how its meaning fractured.
Right. The term itself wasn't entirely new to cinema. The sources point out that the 1990 film Total Recall had a scene where the hero is asked to swallow a red pill to symbolize his desire to return to reality from a dreamlike fantasy.
But The Matrix popularized it exponentially. It created the modern metaphor.
The fascinating but complex element here is its modern cultural trajectory. The film's core metaphor awakening to an objective, hidden reality was subsequently co-opted and repurposed by various online communities.
Yes, the sources document that the term red pill was adopted by certain alt-right fringe groups, including specific men's rights groups, incel subculture, and elements of the QAnon movement.
And for these groups, the term was repurposed.
It was, to signify a sudden realization of a supposed hidden truth or conspiracy regarding social subjugation, or a hidden structure of society that they felt they had suddenly woken up to.
And we report this purely factually, based on the material, just to illustrate how a potent cinematic metaphor can be drastically twisted or appropriated depending on the ideology of the interpreting audience.
Right. It's a transition from a metaphor about an external machine-driven simulation to a metaphor about hidden internal social control.
However, there has been a more recent, less politically charged shift in language.
As of 2021, the verb pill and the suffix pilled have entered more generalized mainstream use, meaning simply developing a sudden, intense interest or having a definitive realization about a specific, often niche topic or ideology.
So the meaning has diffused dramatically across the cultural landscape, moving away from its more charged associations, though they still persist.
Oh, exactly.
And finally, we have the film's most personal thematic layer, confirmed by its creators years after its initial release: the allegory for gender transition.
This provides the film with yet another profound recontextualization. Lily Wachowski confirmed this, stating years later that The Matrix was entirely intended as an allegory for gender transition.
A feeling she and her sister, Lana Wachowski, who both transitioned, shared.
Yes. She noted that at the time of filming in the late 90s, the corporate world just wasn't ready for that discussion, so the allegory had to remain submerged.
It truly gives Neo's journey a layer of deeply personal meaning. She specifically connected Morpheus's description of the Matrix, creating a fundamental feeling like a splinter in your mind.
A nagging, pervasive sense that something is wrong with the world you inhabit.
She connected that directly to the experience of gender dysphoria.
That phrase perfectly captures the internal struggle of feeling mismatched with one's perceived reality. Furthermore, the source material notes an interesting detail about a character that was ultimately cut.
The character Switch.
The original idea for Switch was that they would be a woman in the Matrix, where they felt comfortable, and a man in the real world, or vice versa. But this explicit dual-gender presentation was removed from the final cut due to studio pressure.
This layering of personal allegory, philosophical questioning, and technical ambition just ensures the film operates on every conceivable level. Moving now into the film's lasting influence. Its commercial success set the stage. That massive $467.8 million worldwide.
And the critical praise has only solidified over the decades. Critics universally called it the most influential action movie of the generation, and technically mind-blowing. It wasn't just a fun movie, it was recognized as culturally significant.
The American Film Institute placed it on their 100 Years.100 Thrills list.
And it was eventually selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant in 2012.
But more crucially than awards, it fundamentally shaped the mechanics of modern filmmaking and action choreography.
Oh, completely. The film's seamless integration of wire fu techniques and the hiring of Hong Kong action personnel like Diwen Wu Ping created an immediate seismic shift in how Hollywood choreographed action.
The result was an immediate high demand for these techniques and personnel in subsequent major Hollywood films across all genres.
Things like X-Men and Charlie's Angels.
We have a powerful quote from the source material from Chad Stahelski, who was Keanu Reeves' stunt double in The Matrix.
And later went on to direct the John Wick series.
Exactly. He stated that The Matrix literally changed the industry by shifting the power balance. It made martial arts choreographers far more prevalent and influential in Hollywood productions than traditional stunt coordinators had been previously.
It also set the modern template for blockbuster genres. It influenced everything from later sci-fi blockbusters like Inception and Tron, Legacy, and it is widely credited with helping to establish the visual language for modern superhero blockbusters.
Showing how to visually represent speed, power, and perception.
And helping to make comic book superheroes hip and technically feasible on a grand scale.
And finally, the immense success of the original film contributed to a major Hollywood trend, the interest in creating sophisticated trilogies and expanded media universes.
The Matrix didn't just spawn two direct sequels, Reloaded and Revolutions, but also the critically acclaimed animated anthology, The Animatrix, multiple video games including the innovative Enter the Matrix and The Matrix Online.
And it even continued its cultural reach into the arts, with the 2023 live immersive dance production directed by Danny Boyle called Free Your Mind.
It truly became a multimedia touchstone.
So we have covered a spectacular range of analysis here. From the unprecedented physical preparations and the birth of bullet time, to the deep wells of classical philosophy, the rigorous intellectual reading list, and the recently confirmed allegorical depth the Wachowskis built into the story.
It really operates on every possible level. High-octane action, technological revolution, and intellectual rigor.
The final piece to consider, then, is how the film continues to shape our perception and interaction with our own reality. As Christopher Nolan once described it, The Matrix was an incredibly palpable mainstream phenomenon that made people think, hey, what if this isn't real?
And that continued cultural fascination with the idea that we might be living in a sophisticated, controlled simulation. It tells us something profound about our contemporary relationship with technology, digital media, and accepted reality. It makes us question the input we receive every day.
Which raises a final important question for you, the listener, to contemplate beyond this thorough analysis. Given how the film operates on multiple layers of code, mythology, and allegory, what system, what accepted reality, or what personal truth are you still trying to perceive the code of in your own world?
Food for thought long after you unplug.
Titi for participating in this analysis of a true cinematic masterpiece.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.